2020 was a bizarre year for obvious reasons. Among the uncharted waters of a global pandemic, an entire stack of generations were subjugated to staying indoors and quarantining for the better good of... some people were staying indoors. In any case, if you were a student, a young professional, or even an adult used to going out from time to time or having outdoor hobbies that involved another human being not in your immediate family, you were kind of... 2021 came around and slowly, very slowly, things wanted to make their way back to normal, but we were not quite there just yet. Over a year after working from home and logging onto Zoom calls became the standard, the release of Resident Evil's Village was just around the corner, and the shadow of it looming was huge. Not since the days of Bowsette did my Twitter feed become an absurd Tumblr timeline of pure Lady Dimetrescu, thirsting to the point where I wasn't even sure if we cared about the actual game anymore. Her presence was just that big. At first I was miffed, but gradually I too became an avid participant in the Lady D hype with my friends because, it was funny. And then maybe a few weeks in, I absolutely hated it, and I blame my work for that. If you didn't know already, I used to be a video producer for GameSpot.com. Yep, that one. Maybe you grew up like I did reading the reviews, going down to the pros cons list and just looking for the number. Maybe you were a fan of Giant Bomb, or, and this would mean the world to me, maybe you were actually a fan of us. The current generation of GameSpot. That would be Kurt Locker, Jake, JL, Max, those of us working on Firearms Expert Reacts, and everything else between the lines.
Dude! Wow, are you kidding me? Holy shit. Are you kidding me?
What did I do?
You won! You won, dude! You won! Are you kidding me?
With 2 kills!
Holy shit!
Okay, cool.
In any case, around this time, things weren't looking so hot for us. On the one hand, gaming, streaming, and media news was going through a tech bubble boom, with every company overhiring, and on the other hand, the cracks were already showing for those of us that did not work for Amazon or Salesforce or Twitch at the time. So point being, we were a little desperate to boost our engagement as much as possible because Google, being the absolute that it is, keeps trying to fuck up its own SEO algorithm, causing every channel to immediately make the switch. Why do you think every YouTuber does this? Or anytime you want to find just the smallest guide, you're at the mercy of the most over-convoluted graphics intro and a like, subscribe, hit the bell, follow, check out the Patreon. Short answer, it is Google's fault. And yes, I know YouTube is owned by Google. The irony of all this though is not lost on me, I promise you. All this meant that we had to absolutely do our best to shove in Lady D everywhere. In every thumbnail, in every headline, in the deck, the video notes. Shit, if we had a bibliography or a works cited page, we'd probably shove in every article linked in her wiki page if we could. Because the internet, which is you guys, you absolute thirsty simping mongrels, which as Brittany Broski would say,
they like it! They like it. Y'all are some whores.
Got to the point where before I even set foot in the game, I was absolutely sick of Lady D, and I was already biased against the game in a way that wasn't fair. Luckily for all of us, the game was so fucking good, my bias was removed instantly, and it was all because Resident Evil 8 is not Resident Evil 7. With Resident Evil 7, the entire game revolved around the Baker family. Almost every aspect used them as the primary characters, and only through them were you allowed to push on and uncover the deeper horrors that awaited you. In the marketing of Resident Evil Village, Lady D and her 3 daughters were similar to the Baker family in that respect, but her actual role in the game, which, it did involve a substantial amount, was still just the appetizer. The rest of the village, its lycans, the remaining 4 lords, which in my head I kept calling them the 4 horsemen, that story and that gameplay never quite grew stale thanks to the creative twists with each lord's sort of domain. Lady D's castle was a labyrinth Victorian Gothic maze that seemed to take inspiration from the constant chase of Mr. X from RE2, while interweaving and backtracking countless times through each and every room as you slowly begin to unlock more and more of your surroundings. Winding stairs, long cramped hallways, and classic puzzles were aplenty, alongside a variety of disgusting vampires, flying beasts, and an epic final boss fight with the lady voted most likely to step on me, herself. It was at this stage that I realized the main course of the game was still ahead of me. In fact, I probably would have lost my shit if they decided to fade in the title graphic as soon as you open the gate, exiting out towards the next lord's domain. Speaking of, if you wondered how I felt during that sequence, I wasn't feeling great, pal. I'll just leave it at that. But to say the least, this section was so damn bone-curdling that I'm just out here literally making up phrases to try and make sense of how frightened I was. Again, I need to start recording my reactions, man, because I literally played this entire sequence with my eyes half shut. If Lady D's castle gave me hope that this wouldn't be quite as scary as RE7, Donna Beneviento gave me war flashbacks to Louisiana. An intense puzzle not unlike one you dealt with when Lucas was playing with his food in RE7, the painfully dragged out assembly of the doll and the inevitable reveal had me literally yelling. Truthfully, elite level design and creativity that kept me stone cold still in absolute panic. Breaking free from the evil doll's clutches, I felt like I could breathe again, and the rest of the game felt like familiar territory. Combat felt solid, fair, satisfying in a good way. The classic loop of gathering treasures and equipping yourself with vastly powerful gear to match up the more difficult enemies ahead was a lot of fun, letting me pause from time to time from the main event to get my fill of some of the other offerings in this village. Salvatore Moreau might have been the weakest lord literally and in the figurative sense, but I still didn't mind it too much, although it did lack in almost every aspect compared to the much stronger Lady D, Donna, and Carl Heisenberg. Which, speaking of, my friends in Discord kept demanding I raise the game volume every time he spoke because they are huge Astarion fans. And Neil Newbon voices both of them. I even had to admit, and this is someone who hasn't played BG3 all the way through yet, the voice acting truly was a standout, across all characters, but Heisenberg in particular did have this smug, pompous, egomaniac vibe that just oozed out through his insults and pitying of Ethan in a way that made me want to, quite frankly, beat the shit out of Homeboy more than ever. So, Capcom did their job right.
Last chance. You don't want to find out what's in that hole.
I'll take my chances.
You're futile.
All of this felt fantastic and nothing felt out of place, at least not until our boy Chris Redfield showed up once again. Thankfully, he did look a million times better despite my friend's objections. I mean, is he on steroids? No, he's full natty now, and I respect it. Thankfully, his morality, which was thrown into question early in the game, has also beaten the Wesker-style allegations, and he's one of the good guys. Even better at first, you get to play as him, being one of the good guys at the end. Only problem is, that particular moment, as fun as it was, it did not mesh as well as it could have, not with the fantastic build-up and pacing so far. RE7 suffered from the same paradox of emotions for me, where the final act felt abruptly out of place and off topic, which was bad. But I'm also the strongest I've ever been arsenal-wise, which helps me feel less scared, which is good. So, even though I'm not happy about it, I have to agree with what a lot of my friends were saying, and that when push comes to shove, the final act took a good recipe so far, and it added maybe a little too much of a substitute ingredient, which unfortunately does damage the end result as a whole. Resident Evil games are inherently story campaign games, something we should have more of. I mean, I've grown sick of live service games considering they are the reason I have this disgusting backlog to begin with. Meaning when it comes to Resident Evil, once you're done, you're like, done. There's no real need to keep playing. Unless you are a completionist and want to unlock more goodies, trophies, or just challenge yourself with a higher difficulty playthrough. I tip my hat off to you guys that like doing that stuff, really. But as long as I've gotten a healthy smattering of achievements, and I'm not really missing out on anything significant, I'm more than happy uninstalling and just moving on. Village, however, did manage to still keep me around for an extra week or so, thanks to a not horrible DLC, but also its Mercenaries mode, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Now, this episode's a lot shorter than some of the other ones, and I did that for a reason. It's because next week's episode is going to be an absolute monster. But if I were to sum up my feelings on Resident Evil Village, it's just one of those things where this game had both style and substance. Even if the substance did get a little confusing with all of the deeper world lore and connections between 7 and Village. Will I need to read through all the wikis around the game? Yeah, I do. Did it hamper my enjoyment? No, not really. Anything I did not like in the game felt pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, and overall, I am really happy I am one step closer to having completed all of the Resident Evil games. So if I were to count all that's left besides the original non-remastered games, which I've never played, is the remaster for, RE1, RE0, Revelations, and maybe some of the outliers, kind of like Code Veronica, but I'm not really sure how necessary they really are. So why don't you let me know if any of those are absolute must-plays, and I'll throw them on the list. But I'm pleased to say that in terms of mainline games, I think I'm nearly all done. Until next time.